you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Dabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Welcome to Second Take with IDK, Isma Dakaba Chigongo, and my name is Mebo Kevirunji. Isma, good morning.
Good morning,
good afternoon,
good evening.
Isma, I noticed that I have tried to pronounce your name, but you always say I pronounce it wrong, and I think you're just biased. I hear, and I have heard all the years I've worked with you, Dakaba, something like that.
It's a prince-like name, and abasoga titwogeranga to papa. There is no rush. There is no reason to rush language. The name is Dakaba. You have to have your tongue between your teeth. Like a T and H. Yeah, you have to have your tongue between your teeth to pronounce it right. Dakaba.
Dakaba. Okay. Well, this is Second Take with IDK. Isma Dakaba. I hope I've gotten it.
No, you would never.
And that's what you say. But you know,
you
Isma,
would never.
One of the
when you concentrate on trying to get the name right, you'll never get it.
I'll never get
Ismail
it right.
Dakaba Chigongo. There is no need to. Yeah.
Okay, this is Second Take with IDK. This is the English version, because I've seen some of your comments saying Mebo's English is too much. Kati vanange tukoze tutya. What? There's a Luganda version with Brandon Chimuli.
Yeah.
If you're subscribed to this channel, I'm sure you've seen the Luganda version.
Yeah,
but
you should be able. That's why we remind people to subscribe. Then you're able to see the content. When you see a lady, it's English.
Yes.
When you see
Brandon,
when you see a gentleman with a very extravagant nightlife, it's Luganda.
and there's a way Brandon sometimes begins by saying, you know, tumida kubantu. And I wonder, in English, how would I say that? And would it actually work if I say, greet the people?
Send greetings. Send greetings to the people. Yeah, it would work.
Okay, send greetings to the people, because there are people watching. I saw a message from someone in the US. Quite a number of your messages. I will maybe go through some of them quickly. Yeah. Yes, we have Elijah Ntege, who says, I am enjoying from Los Angeles, California. He's a Liverpool fan. So thank you, Elijah. So some of the messages, requesting for a show, Dakaba, with Mujib Kasule. Then we have, that is from Simply Ibrahim. We have Dennis Semakula, who says, IDK, I'm a KCCA fan and would like to be hosted to analyze the technical aspects of KCCA and the current coaches.
You can analyze the coaches, not the technical aspects of the game. Because to be technical, then you need to study to be technical about the game. So give us your CV, in other words. Defense looked bad because attack was so good. This is about PSG, Bayern, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. UEFA and Premier League should reconcile. They should have same penalties for the same fouls, and you really explained it well last week. Yeah, but that's not going to happen. There's always the rules are always elastic. That's why there are teams that play on the edge. Yeah, that always push the envelope. So the margins that's more, but that will never happen for the rules to be even, because every federation under FIFA or UEFA are allowed to implement rules the way they deem fit. But one of the things I've stated repeatedly is that the more IFAB and FIFA have changed the handball and offside rule, the more confusing it has become over the years. Maybe 30 years ago, the moment the ball hit your hand, it was a penalty. Now they introduced a ball to hand. Now the offside, when the linesman used to flag, that was it. Now there is when the person passing the ball makes contact
yeah, with the ball. Where is your last part of the body? Now they've introduced body parts in the offside rule. Yeah, that if it's the hand that is offside the elbow, then you're onside. Then it has to be the feet, a part of the body that can score. So I think the more they've changed, the more confusing it's become. So maybe that's the one thing that could change over time. I like the proposal of Arsene Wenger. He's put up some very bad proposals, some proposals I do not agree with. One of them is the kick-in, because he thinks teams are wasting time on the throw-in. So he wants that to be a kick-in. He also wants the offside rule to be changed to daylight between the last defender and the attacking player. That will be very, very difficult. That there must be daylight, and I think it's been trialed in some of the age group tournaments organized by FIFA. So eventually FIFA looks skewed to be heading into that direction. I'm not very sure even the daylight rule will work for a long period of time. For me, one of the things about sport or life, that you must make rules that are very durable.
Okay.
Yeah, that you're not going to go back and review after 2-3 years because what you decided is not working.
It's not working.
Yeah.
There's another rule someone is talking about. Michael Ayese, he says, talk about women's sport. Talking about women's sport got me thinking of how FIFA is going to burden, he uses the word burden, UPL clubs with owning a females team starting next season.
Yes, that's one of the rules that is being introduced in licensing, that to be able to play in the Uganda Premier League, all the clubs must be able to have a women's team. It's a very touchy subject, because sometimes I think of it, how are we then going to support women's sport if we don't try to take this route? Because if you allow clubs to never start women's teams, then we'll never have them. However, the clubs themselves, the men's clubs, are already struggling to survive, to get players to training, to get players to matches, and to sustain these players. That's why we have eternal conversations about player salaries not being paid. So it's a very tough balancing act that FIFA face. That is one way to look at it. Already, there's been a rule for clubs that have qualified for the continent, that they have an affiliate, which is a women's club. That's why we have KCC working with Kampala Queens. That's why we have Vipers working with Wakiso Hill. That's why we have URI now have a club. We have Bull, who have Ginger City Queens and all. Now, okay, you have already some clubs that have already gone into that direction when you think of Maroons and She Maroons. So it's a very touchy subject, because while we might sit here and think about the economic burden on Uganda Premier League clubs globally, there's been a challenge of investing in women's football. Let me give you a very basic example. In our lifetime, one of the most profitable clubs globally is Manchester United. The women's club is not even 20 years old. It's only started. Manchester United Women FC is a very new addition. It's a place where teams like Arsenal have been, Chelsea have been, Real Madrid have been, Barcelona and the others, but United have only joined. Why do you think United delayed to start? Is it because they could not afford it? No. So it's a very tough balancing act for me. But the eternal question for me is always about sustainability. When CAF did start it, saying clubs will not be licensed for the CAF Champions League and CAF Confederations Cup unless they are affiliated to a women's team, clubs did it. I remember my colleague Fred Mwambo did write a very compelling case, a very compelling story. It was in the Sunday Monitor some 2 or 3 years ago, about the same subject, whether CAF were just doing it to tick a box of gender parity, gender equity, this kind of debates that we see globally that have been happening for a very long time, the things about equal pay and supporting women's sport. And Fred Mwam in that article asked whether it's just about ticking a box, yeah, or it's something that CAF are willing to do. Now it's the same question you want to ask FIFA. Is it about just ticking a box,
or they really
or it's something that we really want to do and invest in women's sport? So for me, I don't have a take, and it sounds like he has an extreme view, that clubs should not start women's teams. But then one day we'll be having a debate about how women's teams are not supported enough.
Yeah.
So how then do we start to support them? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they are very expensive to manage. Yes, clubs are struggling just to manage their women's teams, and they have junior teams to manage too. But then what is going to happen over a period of time? How then do we get women involved in sport if we don't take this route where it becomes compulsory to start them? It's a very tough balancing act for me.
And finally, talking about things that were probably marginalized, there are two questions here from different people. One is Madia Nankanja, and then the other one is Yusuf Kasozi. Madia says, even in Saudi, there is Al Ahly, but I think maybe she was commenting on Kasozi, who says, I'm glad that my comment finally breaks through on your program. Now I want Isma to at least say something about Ronaldo's Al Nassr.
They currently have what, a 5-point lead, even if they lost over the weekend to Al Qadaish. They have a 5-point lead in the Saudi Pro League, and edging closer to winning their first league title since Ronaldo joined. They have not been the biggest club in this country, in Saudi, because Al Hilal and Al Ittihad have been the biggest club. So they've taken significant steps to putting themselves in that position. Even if the team that is second, Al Hilal, have a game in hand. By the time we did this show, they have a game in hand because I had seen the table. Al Nassr played 31 and Al Hilal played 30, and there's a 5-point lead. Yes, they win that, and then it's a 2-point lead if Al Hilal were to win that game. Yeah, but they are very, very close to winning a league title with Ronaldo. When he chose to go to Saudi, while the money was very, very enticing, I think he also wanted to win and also move closer to scoring those 1,000 goals. All of which will have video, like he stated, unlike Romario, whose 1,000 did not have video for us to make reference that he scored this on this date. So eventually he's going to get that target. He's going to hit that target.
And talk about winning. Arsenal are edging closer. They are now 6 points clear at the top. Were you satisfied with that win against Fulham over the weekend? And we know City are playing later.
More than satisfied, for the very simple reason, it's the first time in nearly 2 months Arsenal played football. The first time in nearly 2 months. That is as good as a championship winning side performs.
Was Fulham a formidable opponent?
Fulham season is done. They are not going to get relegated. They are very unlikely to get into Europe. But I thought the performance, they put Fulham on the back foot very early on. Bukayo Saka was in the mood. I was actually forced during the game to Google about his girlfriend. That's how good Bukayo Saka was in the moment. Then you imagine things.
Things are good at home.
Yeah, things are good at home. He was in the mood. He was smiling. He was going past players. He sat Raul Jimenez down for that pass for the goal. He scored and set up one. Victor Gyökeres was running the lines very well, bringing players into play when he had chance to control the ball. There's been a sense of nervousness inside the Emirates over the past few weeks. You sense the fans have been living on the edge. I think the team took them off the edge with that performance, and in the end 3-0 was a case of how many more they could have scored.
Yeah.
They tended to take the foot off the gas. You could almost sense Mikel Arteta even got to a point where he could manage the game, take off some of his critical players, Saka, Declan Rice, some of the players he thinks will be central to what they'll be doing against Atlético Madrid in the Champions League. So it was a case of where they refound their mojo. Yeah, you could say. That's I've not seen Arsenal this imposing, this good in several weeks. So there was a lot of satisfaction in that, and perhaps if they play like that over the next 3 games, then they are champions. Yeah, if they could bring the same kind of energy, and they seem like they're conducting an orchestra inside the Emirates on Saturday. So that's more like it. That's more like it. Yeah.
Pressure is so much now on City. And the pressure works in a negative way, should I say? Because they have to win.
I think pressure is a privilege.
Pressure is a privilege.
Yeah, and if you need to work under pressure, I think it's a privilege. And I would imagine someone of the stature of Pep Guardiola, maybe the club as an institution may have that pressure, and maybe they have some young players, Ryan Cherkis, the Nico Rileys, and several others. For someone like Pep Guardiola, no.
I'm talking about the players on the pitch.
In the end, it comes down to the manager. I've always argued, and the most important person at a club is that coach, the manager. Much more important than any player. Much more important.
It's my serious.
It will take you time maybe to move to my side, but over time you realize it. The most important at that top level. That's why when a club hires a coach, they solve so many of their issues. When you hire an excellent coach, you're sorted.
So, I was about to ask if you Googled Kobe Maino's girlfriend as well, but let's move, because he was on the scoring sheet, or maybe the howler by the goalkeeper. But so Ancelotti, so what has happened between last season and this season to Liverpool, to him as an individual? If you're saying the coach is the most important, it has just been a few months since they won.
Now, that's why you can believe that the coach is the most important, because when he made a tweak to how the team was playing, I think last season one of the things he did was not to change too much from what Jurgen Klopp had done with the club. Now, he's wanted the team to play a lot more slower with a lot more control, and you sense the team has gone on the other side. But for their latest game, I thought they were largely very unlucky. I thought they were very poor in the first half, but I thought for those minutes when United gifted them the goals with the mistakes, Liverpool were very good. They put United on the back foot, got back into the game, then conceded that late goal to Kobe Maino. Yes, the questions are going to be asked of Arne Slot, and I watched his interview, and he spoke about how referees have also not been his bread, because if he thinks the goal that Benjamin Sesko scored, the second for United, should have been ruled out. But I like the argument that I had. There wasn't conclusive evidence of a ball hitting his hand. So you let those go. If the ref has given it on the pitch and there isn't enough evidence to overturn it, you let those go. But in the end, this game was symptomatic of what Liverpool have been most of the season. They were being outrun by United. They were not physical enough in the areas where they needed to be. And the goal they considered the winner is a goal that many Liverpool fans around the world can replay, that they've conceded way too many times, right from outside the box, where they do not clear their lines or do not cover that space in time, where you've had Ryan Gravenberch and Alexis McAllister cover that area of the pitch. So in the end, perhaps it went the way Liverpool's season has gone. And then for United, it went the way a bit of the last few weeks of United's season have gone under Michael Carrick. And Ancelotti can have all his complaints, yes. Even he, and I'm one of those who lost faith in him. I've stated that repeatedly. And that faith I did not lose after I started losing. I thought even by the time they won the league title, for the final 3-4 months of the season, they were not playing any football. And the team looked like it had developed a sinking feeling in that period when they were winning the league. And I've repeatedly called for him to go, not because I have a solution, but because sometimes the coach is a cheap option to replace, because the club has invested heavily, in excess of £450 million in players, and then they got worse. Then how then do you make an excuse for that, yeah, when you've invested that kind of money? Of course, they've also had a challenge with the transition. All of us knew that once Jurgen Klopp leaves, most of the players had been of age, and the club was going to plunge itself into a deep transition. Now, the transition has arrived for me a year late, because that transition should have started last season. They should have started moving on some of the players. Baker, Van Dijk, Robertson,
Salah?
Salah.
Really?
Yes, the transition should have started, yes, last season. And then they've delayed it for another year. And now you can see the price of that you need to build a new team. Now they have to build and try to win at the same time. That's why they invested the kind of money. But now it's going to get even faster because Salah will be gone. So is Robertson, he will be gone. In a year, Van Dijk will not be there. I have a sneaky feeling Alisson will be gone in June or July at the end of the season. Then after that, all the players who are very critical or are part of the spine under Jurgen Klopp are gone. Then you start the proper rebuild of the side. So it's been very difficult, and one of the toughest things to do in sport is to rebuild a team. It's very easy to build the first team to win, but thereafter, if you stay in a job, how you rebuild the side. And that's why I think sometimes the people in the boardroom do cut Ancelotti some slack and know that some of the problems that the club is having are not entirely down to him. Some of them is down to the team going through a transition. And everyone is aware that that transition will take a bit of time, and they are willing to allow Ancelotti undertake that. I'm one of those who thinks that he does not have the tools to do so. But those who are making the decisions think maybe he deserves another opportunity to sort out the mess that is created.
Okay, to another thrilling game. I thought it was thrilling for me and my household. But I'll ask you again, I'm going to hold you to your word against managers. What was Unai Emery thinking with having those good players on the bench? Did he underestimate Tottenham?
Rotation is a game of risk and reward. I don't know of a team that does not rotate.
But this was critical to them.
Yes, critical. It's a game of risk and reward.
Especially since he played after Liverpool.
Yes, it's a game of risk and reward. There is no manager at the top level who competes in more than one competition who does not rotate. Would be seated here making the same discussion about the Arsenal. Yeah, because even they rotated. Zubimendi was on the bench. They played Miles Lewis Skelly in midfield. He's only played there as an academy player, not enough in the senior team. I think he's played in the midfield once in the senior team. So it's a game of risk and reward. That's why when you win, you're called a genius, and when you lose, you're called a tinkerman. It's almost inevitable when you're playing in Tuchel. For Aston Villa to be able to compete and try to win the Europa League, which is a pathway into the Champions League, and also retain their Champions League status in the league, he had to rotate. There was no other way he's going to be able to balance the two. Yes, it's easy to say these players earn a lot of money and should be able to walk out every 72 hours. But even from afar, sometimes we sense and see the fatigue, and we sense the need to freshen up the squad. So for me, it's always a game of risk and reward. He took a risk and made those changes for the game against Tottenham. And the players he brought off a bench, I thought, let him down, especially in that first half. They were nowhere to be seen, never created a chance, hardly got into the Tottenham Hotspur box. Yes, you could also argue Tottenham was very good and not desperate. You could say Tottenham also
I saw a renewed energy. I saw a fight that I hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah, so a bit they were pressing high up the pitch. They were hungrier. They're in a situation where heads you lose, tails you lose. So they have to find a way to get a result. And you sense with what you state with the energy. Yes, Roberto De Zerbi made them play in the way they did, especially for that first 45 minutes. I thought they were very good for the result, and eventually when Conor Gallagher and Richarlison scored those goals, they were as good as Tottenham deserved from the game, and that lifted them out of the bottom three, out of relegation.
Yes, and they played after West Ham.
After West Ham, yeah, very, very good. And West Ham, when you look at the result and say 3-0 against Brentford, you might think they were terrible. They actually had chances. They hit the post. They had a goal disallowed by Mavropanos. They had chances in that game, but whenever they missed, the other side, Brentford went and scored. So very huge result, I think, for Tottenham out of the bottom three, and now can start to think of, if they win their remaining 3 games, then they have their place booked in the Premier League for another season. So it's a very good thing for Roberto Di Zerbi, and I've stated that I think Tottenham have been very reckless this season. Yes, they started with a coach who did not perform very well, but I don't think Thomas Frank...
He wasn't given time, I think.
I think Thomas Frank would keep them in the league comfortably had he stayed longer. But they've been so reckless that they even gave away 5 games of the season by appointing Igor Tudor, who I felt had no chance of racking up points, especially in a relegation fight. So, in the end, very good result for Tottenham. They profited from Unai Emery's changes, and I insist, a game of risk and reward. There is no coach in more than one competition who will not rotate. He's not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So risk and reward in Italy, Serie A, the Inter has been rewarded, have they?
Yeah, 21 league titles now, because they beat Parma by 2-0. Marcus Thuram scoring one of those, and then Henrik Mkhitaryan scoring a late goal. But that was largely down to the fact that they only needed a draw in that game against Parma. They had seen Como and Napoli draw goalless earlier on, which meant that they only needed a point. So for Christian Chivu in his first season as coach of Inter Milan, he's gone with the biggest reward, and they could actually be more, because they also still have to play that Coppa Italia final. So he could leave with 2 titles in a season that Inter Milan will look back and still regret the manner in which they appeared for that game against Bodo Glimt in the Champions League, because they could have made a deeper run in Europe, but in the end, a league title, wherever it is won across the world, and a cup title, a league and cup double, does not read too bad, in terms of a CV of what you've done for the entire year. I felt Inter Milan have been heads and shoulders above the rest. The manner in which Napoli have fallen, now, of course, part of it is down to injuries. Then we've all known about the decline of AC Milan and Juventus over the past few years. All that Inter Milan needed to do, I think, is to stay ahead of the pack. And when you look at the number of goals they've scored in comparison to their competition, then you confirm that Inter Milan have indeed been the best team in that league this season.
And in Spain, what would you say, who would you say has been the best team this season?
Inevitably, Barcelona will be champions over the next game. That will be El Clasico. They have a chance to win the title against Real Madrid in the next round of fixtures. I felt it was very, very important for Real Madrid in that game in Barcelona against Espanyol, for them to avoid defeat and ensure that they do not give Barcelona a guard of honor in the next round of fixtures at the Camp Nou. So Vinicius did score twice as they ran out winners at Espanyol, and Barcelona had won their game by 2-1 against Osasuna, where they needed to get some late goals, some late heroics from Robert Lewandowski and Ferran Torres for them to beat what was a very plucky Osasuna side eventually. So inevitably, Barcelona will clinch a second successive league title, which leads a lot of egg on the face of Real Madrid. They expected to be competing and winning titles, and this is a second successive season where they go home with nothing. And that is never a good sign. But in the end, I think the focus at Real Madrid is about who they are going to appoint to take charge of the club going forward. Alvaro Bello has not done enough to suggest that he deserves to be given a longer spell as the coach at the Los Merengues, or at like it's called, the club. So inevitably, for me, the discussion for them is going to be around who is hired. They are behind a very young Barcelona side who then, I insist, the coach is the most important. I do not think many coaches besides Hansi Flick would win a title with this Barcelona side, even with Lamine Yamal in the side, with a decline and over the hill striker in Robert Lewandowski. But Hansi Flick has really harnessed the good things about this very young squad and put them in a position where they've worked for one another. When he's there to tweak and put players in positions where they may not be natural, he's done that, and eventually Barcelona are going to be champions very soon.
So I'm sure the managers of Arsenal and Atletico both watched the PSG Bayern semi-final. So this week we have the second leg of the semi-finals. And you said before that those two clubs are very attacking clubs, Bayern and PSG. What do you think the managers would tell them, that would tell their teams to make it as entertaining, or maybe as, you know, to be more attack focused, so that we can have a semi-final between Arsenal and Atletico that is as, you know, as interesting as PSG Bayern?
I don't think,
and come away with a win.
I don't think Diego Simeone and Mikel Arteta feel they have an obligation to entertain, especially at this stage of a season when it's a semi-final. I think both of them are looking at how they get into a final, because we are talking about two teams that have the longest droughts in terms of winning the Champions League, because Arsenal have played 224 games without winning the Champions League and have not been in a final in 20 years. Atlético Madrid are anywhere around 195 games in Europe without winning the Champions League. These are the two teams with the longest spells of competing in the Champions League and never winning. Well, how was it supposed to be fair? Yeah? So I think at this stage they have no obligation to entertain. They have to find a way to get into the final. After last week's result, the 1-1 draw, I am confident that Arsenal start as favourites. They picked a good result on the road, and they followed that up with a performance against Fulham that even gave them the leg room to rest some of their critical players after going 3-0 up against Fulham. So there'll be freshness. And I'll get to the Atletico side, because Atletico sat the entire team. With the exception of Lenomad, I think is the only one who played, and is not normally a starter. But all the other players did not, the players they would be using did not even need to get off a bench for that game against Valencia. And there is a confirmation Julian Alvarez is fit for that return leg. So for me, Arsenal will start as favourites. There's going to be a buzz around the Emirates. The fans have been given something to chew on, not only with that result in Madrid, but also with the 3-0 drubbing of Fulham and the manner in which Mikel Arteta and his team played. You have the fresh legs of Bukayo Saka. Now he's got 3 games under his belt. If he's in the mood, the Atletico Madrid left back is going to be in for a very, very long night. You have Victor Gyökeres, who should have had a hat-trick against Fulham, scored 2, but also I thought played very well in his link-up play, held up the ball quite well. And then you have the fresh legs of Zubimendi, also was on the bench, so should come into that midfield slot which was occupied by Lewis Kelly in that game against Fulham. There's so many good things that Mikel Arteta can work with, and perhaps in the end the advantage that Arsenal will have is the ability to defend, and then their goalkeeper David Raya. When they've needed to win a game where they need their goalkeeper to come into his element, David Raya has been there. So that is going to be a factor. However, to call them favourites, and I stated last week that I felt the margins between these two teams are very, very minimal. And last week I gave Atletico a margin of 51-49 over Arsenal, which is very minimal if you understand your statistics. I think after the result last week, I would say Arsenal 53-47 to go through. And Atletico will challenge them. If they get the ball into Julian Alvarez, we saw how good he is with knitting, with putting that forward line together, which is something they need to do a bit more. They need to get bodies in and around Julian Alvarez. Of course, one of those has got to be Antoine Griezmann. And then they've got to get at that Arsenal backline. They've got to get behind that Arsenal backline, which Ademola Lookman would be very critical because of his pace and his ability off the left side of the midfield, but also because while he starts on the left, I think he offers a lot of support because he drifts into the centre forward position alongside Julian Alvarez, and that will be very critical with what Atletico Madrid do. We've all known about Atletico's ability to defend under Diego Simeone. I think this game for them is going to be decided by how well they can attack and not how well they defend, because they can defend in default, but I'm not very confident about their ability to get more than a goal, which they will need, yeah, at the Emirates. That's what they've got to show if they are going to go to another Champions League final.
Okay. Luis Enrique versus Vincent Kompany. What will they change? What strategy? Because clearly the goals are there.
The goals are there. I think that both will be desperate to defend better, but for me, more so with Bayern Munich. I watched their game over the weekend against Heidenheim. Yeah, they drew 3-3 after trailing by 2-0. The week before that, they were trailing 3-0 against Mainz, and eventually came back to win 4-3. In terms of numbers, and I beg to be corrected by anyone who is watching, they've conceded 16 goals over their past 6 games. Ooh. And that is a very, very bad number. Okay, if you don't even have to go that far back, in their last 3 games, that is Mainz, PSG, and Heidenheim, they've conceded 13 goals over the last 3 games. Now, I think for Vincent Kompany, it's got to be very clear what they want to get out of this game. I would excuse them for the games against Mainz and Heidenheim because they've played their second string or third string side. However, in all those games, when they've conceded goals, then they brought on their attacking line. Harry Kane has come off the bench, so has Luis Diaz and some of the other players, because from their latest round, I think only Jonathan Tah and Musiala started. So for me, it's how much they can keep out. Because in the first leg, Manuel Neuer did not make a single save. 5 shots on goal, 5 goals went in. But none of us has ever seen over a 20-year period Manuel Neuer leave a game without making a save. I think he's got to make a save 1 or 2 in this game for them to be able to advance. But for Bayern, it's about what they can keep away from PSG, because we know they can score. When you have Harry Kane and his ability to knit that forward line and play those brilliant passes to Michael Olise and Luis Diaz, and to drop into the center of the pitch and get everyone playing, Harry Kane has that ability. But they'll only go through depending on what they do defensively. What can they keep away from PSG? If they can limit PSG, then they're into the final. On the other side, for me, PSG cannot change much of how they play. When you have forwards with a kind of pace and largely ability to switch positions like Desiree Doué, Ousmane Dembele and Kvaratskhelia, there is not much you can change. So you're going to play at a high tempo and then get the ball over that midfield and get into the forward players and hope they can weave some magic and get past that Bayern Munich backline. For me, that's all that PSG can do. There isn't so much that Luis Enrique can change. You cannot appeal to PSG to play much better defensively. That is not going to change, because when you have Vitinha and João Neves in midfield, then what you're seeking most of the time is going to be control of the ball, ability to keep the ball much longer. The one thing they could change defensively is to get a lot more support for Nuno Mendes off that left side, which I thought Fabian Ruiz brought when he came off the bench. Or you have Wayne Zaire Emery also support whoever plays at right back, because Ashraf Hakim is out injured. How much support they can give their fullbacks. Besides that, I think for Luis Enrique, this has worked for him a lot of the time, and they tend to get stronger in the second half of games. That's the one thing I think he has over many teams across Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now here in Uganda, let's talk about the Uganda Cup, the semis.
One game played, Kitara against Vipers, which ended goalless in Butema. I thought the Vipers goalkeeper, Dennis Chigundu, should be thanked for the performance, which ensures that it's advantage Vipers because they have a second leg to come at St. Mary's Chitende, and they should be able to get the result they need over Kitara, because Kitara and Wasabosa do not change much. They are going to hack the ball. They are going to be very defensive when they come to that second leg. So Vipers will look back. Yes, they did not play very well, but maybe it was going to be very difficult after coming off an energy-sapping game against KCCA in the league in the previous week that ended 1-1. Then you have to travel to Hoima for that one.
Yeah.
So they'll look back and say 2 tough games over a 3-4 day period. They have a bit of time before they get to that other game against Kitara in the second leg, because they have some league games to play between now and then. So not a very good result, but it's an okay result, one they could take, and know that not many teams win at Chitende.
Yeah.
So they could go back to Chitende and flip this and get into another Uganda Cup final.
Okay, let's talk about the ladies, the under-20s, the Queen Cranes. Now, it was very promising. They led, and then what happened?
Then they lost 2-1 in a game that my colleague Maktoum Muziransa, and I've not seen anyone write about women's football as much as he has in the recent past. And he had described this as a David versus Goliath encounter, because Ghana have been the benchmark of age group football in the women, and they've been to multiple under-20 women's World Cups. So in the end, yes, when Agnes Nabu Kenya gave the Queen Cranes the lead in Accra, they must have been dreaming of that David Stone hitting Goliath. But in the end, they were pegged back
We love
and
those
beaten.
stories.
Yeah, there aren't many except the biblical ones. In life, Goliath has won almost every war since the Bible. There aren't many David stories beating Goliath. So I don't think it's a very bad result for Cheryl Bottes. They have a second leg to come in 7 days from that result at Fufa Kadiba Stadium. And they should be fairly confident of delivering a monumental and historic result for Ugandan football. If the Queen Cranes are able to get a second leg result against Ghana and qualify for the World Cup that will be played in Poland, what a story they will have written for themselves. It will be a massive story for not only the players and not only for under 20, but for Ugandan women's football in general. If they're able to qualify for the World Cup, having beaten a team of the stature of Ghana, that will be a major story. Will be one of the biggest successes Ugandan football has had this year.
And I think going by their performance, they should have the confidence.
They should.
Yeah.
Cheryl Bottes and his team should.
Her team.
Yeah, and her team should be very confident of completing the job, but they cannot rest on their laurels. They cannot be complacent. They cannot be overconfident. They still a lot of work to do. Sometimes in women's football, the home and away may not count for much. And maybe this is when FUFA have to make an appeal to the fans, yeah, to get as many, maybe all the teams that are playing in the FUFA Women Super League and FUFA Women Elite League should be there that day to cheer, and anyone else they can
Free
get,
entry?
the families. Yeah, the games have been free. All the women's games that have been played at Fakadiba Stadium have been free. So they need to make an appeal to, I think, to women's football community to all be there and cheer these girls. And if they do, that's maybe the edge that they will need for them to qualify for the World Cup.
Okay. Definitely a stadium that the NBA, no lack of cheerleaders there. Before we go and talk about the casualties with the playoffs, there's a message here from Derek Mubiru. He says, IDK, humbly tell us, with the injuries we have as Minnesota Timberwolves, how are our chances against the Wembenyamas? This seems too big a mountain, another David and Goliath. And thanks to the whole team here at Second Take.
Yeah, the Minnesota Timberwolves have had their challenges, and he mentions the injuries. Anthony Edwards and DiVincenzo, their starting backcourt is out. DiVincenzo is out for the season. Anthony Edwards is expected to return. There's no timeline on when he's going to return, but he's expected to return before the end of the season. But they got a very good result in knocking out the Denver Nuggets, and that should have tested them against Nikola Jokic. But Victor Wembanyama is a totally different beast. He's 7'4". With the skills of a guard, he can put the ball on the floor, he can shoot a three, he can block. The first unanimous defensive player of the year in the NBA, as he was voted this year. And he can shoot mid-range, he can do so many things. The skill set that he has never been seen for 7'4" center.
Yeah.
So yes, like he mentions, it's going to be very hard. Rudy Gobert and some of the players who play on the inside have to be at their best. Rudy Gobert has had a very good series against Denver. I think he has to go even harder against Victor Wembanyama. The one thing that maybe Spurs do not have, and I've mentioned it repeatedly, is experience. Their core is very, very young, with the exception of De'Aaron Fox. The other players are very young. So if they get into a situation that is a bit sticky, how then do they get out of it? Sheldon Castle and Dylan Harper and all these other young players who are part of that squad have not experienced something like this. That's the one thing maybe Minnesota would have. I would imagine Julius Randle and Nazir Reid have been in these situations much more often and have played conference finals on more occasions than the Spurs have. But yes, he's very right to worry. Every team has to worry when you're going to play against the San Antonio Spurs because of that one factor, Victor Wembanyama. And that's one of that is one of the semi-finals that will be happening in the Western Conference. The other is the LA Lakers against the champions Oklahoma City Thunder. Because the Lakers were able to knock out the Houston Rockets in 6 games, the Thunder had been resting for some time and waiting for them, having swept the Phoenix Suns. So that series, I think, starts on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We still have no news on when Luka Doncic will return because they need him for this series. And you get the feeling that the advantage is so skewed towards OKC that if Lakers were to compete, it would only, I think it would even take a miracle. Yeah, OKC do not have Jalen Williams for this series, but such is the efficiency of SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that regardless of what the Lakers might throw at him, still OKC seem to have enough, and the ability to defend. They defend and live on the edge in a manner that is similar to that Piston side that won 2 titles in the early 2000s. Sometimes you feel sorry for how teams are going to score against the OKC because you're going to work for every basket. Lucky the Lakers now have Austin Reeves as part of that offense. He's back from injury, but it's still advantage OKC. And the regular season games also showed us as much. I think the winning margin over the 4 games that they played in the regular season was 29 points that OKC managed to put up. So in terms of a margin. So it's a series, if it gets to anywhere close to 5 games, that will be very interesting what the Lakers will have done. But looks destined for another second round exit for the Lakers and LeBron James in his 23rd season. Then in the East, This is where the most interesting series have been, because we've had at least 6 games for all the series, and then we've had 2 game 7s. The Sixers eventually knocking out the Boston Celtics because Joel Embiid is back playing and posting 30 and playable. They do not have the size to match him, the Celtics, and he was a factor as they knocked out the Celtics, and now they'll be playing against the New York Knicks. And then the other series also delayed. The Cleveland Cavaliers eventually got through after winning that game 7 against the Toronto Raptors, and will be playing against the number 1 seed, that is the Detroit Pistons. Also needed 7 games against Orlando Magic. So now we are into the real business, because now it's semifinals, then we're into the finals. Hopefully we get some 7-game series in these semifinals, especially in the East.
Game 7, the 2 most important words.
Yeah, the 2 most important words in American sport. Game 7.
Okay. Here in Africa, on the continental calendar, I'm talking rally now, where would you rank Shell v Power, Pearl of Africa?
The most enduring rally, I think, on the African continent, from the time when it was handed Africa Rally Championship status back in 1997, and eventually won by Chipper Adams, co-driven by Justin Beyendeza, all those many years back, as many as 29. It's the only rally that has been held every year, with the exception of the COVID-19 year. And this week, as many as 65 crews will be in Mbarara for the latest edition of the Pearl of Africa Uganda Rally. And of those, as many as 23 are competing for the Africa Rally Championship title. We've actually done an entire show on this rally, so watch out for it. You should be able to watch it on Second Take with IDK. We sat down with Reynolds Chibira, the Secretary General of the Federation of Motorsport Clubs of Uganda, and that show should be up. So you should get a chance and watch it and get to understand what makes it very important, what makes it unique, the biggest rally event on the Ugandan calendar, and one of the few that has been held every single year since inception, because the RC has had challenge to have rallies in Ivory Coast, in some places in Burundi, in Zambia, in South Africa. They're always on the calendar and off it every now and then. So make sure you look out for that show and be able to understand, and hopefully make your way to Mbarara at the end of the week. I think I'm skewed towards at least watching Saturday morning on the final day. Yes, I'm skewed towards watching the final day of the event in Mbarara.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You will you'll go there physically?
Yeah, I think I want to be there physically. I plan to be there physically.
Please,
unless something changes during the week.
Please plan for extra time on that bridge around Masaka.
Because the road is
bad. It's really bad. But anyway,
no, I love my motorsport. I love my motorsport. From when my friend Leon Senyang introduced me to it.
Hello,
many
Leon.
Many years ago, I've not left.
Yeah, great guy, Leon. And we met him actually last week.
Yeah.
So to Miami, welcome to Miami Formula One. Kimi Antonelli, you mentioned him briefly last week, but I'm wondering, is he now a leader, ahead of George Russell? Is he taking that leadership position at his young age, or will he buckle under pressure, do you think? Can he be trusted now? And what a performance.
I think they've got to trust him, but they cannot make a decision on who the leader of the team is until we get to a point where Kimi Antonelli and George Russell are racing wheel to wheel, and the team have to make a decision on who should let the other go through. Because that victory in Miami, his third in a row, puts Kimi Antonelli top of the Drivers' Championship by a 20-point margin over George Russell, but there's still a lot of races to go. I think Mercedes do not even have to make a decision yet.
Okay.
Yeah, because the two have not been racing each other very often. considering that George Russell could only finish 4th behind the two McLarens. The McLarens, I thought, while Kimi Antonelli was the driver of the weekend, winning a 3rd successive race from Paul, and is the youngest to do so, he's only 19. I thought the McLarens were the team of the weekend. The manner in which they've come back from that mini 5-week break and won the sprint race on Saturday, and then the manner in which Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri competed, especially Lando, the reigning world champion, and gave Antonelli a run for his money. I thought there's a lot of good things to see about that McLaren. But yeah, now the talk, you cannot deflate or talk ill or demean what Antonelli has been able to do over the past few weeks, and looks a bit, by the time we get to midway through the season, then we can make a conclusion on who should run out as Formula 1 driver or champion, Formula 1 world champion for the year. But while we mentioned Kimi Antonelli, if anyone who watched that race saw how good Max Verstappen drove to finish 5th, it was a bit scary. He went for broke. He raced like, it felt a bit like watching an F1 race in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, where drivers are not actually listening to anything other than step on the pedal and try to get into a good position. And I thought Verstappen, who was threatened to walk away,
yes,
race like someone who's going to be here for a lifetime.
And speaking of girlfriends earlier, is Ferrari distracted?
No.
He finished 6th. Lewis Hamilton finished 6th.
It's done fairly well. The car has not been very good, because in F1 you need the car. The car is as important as the driver. I don't think Ferrari have the car currently. You cannot look beyond that. I think for Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, their car is not as good as Mercedes. It's not as good as the orange of McLaren. They need to keep making improvements, and they've made some bad decisions also this season in the past. So in the end, it's for me, it's down to the car. That Ferrari car has to get better for them to even imagine they'll be competing for the World Championship. But if Lewis Hamilton retired today, I think his curriculum vitae that reads one of the greatest Formula 1 drivers will not even have any blank ink. I think it's still, for a 7-time world champion, to have the most number of poles, the most number of race victories, the most number of so many things, stats that were only synonymous with Michael Schumacher for a very long time. I think the career is done very well, but that Ferrari car has to go to improve for him to even think of an 8th world championship, because right now it's extremely distant.
But they had 5 weeks to work on their car.
They still have a lot of time to work on it.
And I don't know, anyway, they have the resources. It shouldn't really be an issue. But anyway, for this segment of why we should take note, why should we take note of the Pepsi University League, which was won by Muteesa I University?
Numbers. A numbers game. If you put together the universities that play in the Pepsi University Football League, organized by my friend Obala Tubo of Red Rhino, you're thinking of 18 universities. If every university brings an average of 10,000, that's 180,000 students who are involved. And Makere on its own is anyway above 40,000 students. So it's entirely a numbers game. So they've had their final that was played at the Ham Stadium in Nachivo, the first time it was played there. And Muteesa I Royal University won for the first time, beating YMCA. YMCA these days, away from Wandega, I think they have a campus in Buwambo. Yeah, and they are able to award as diplomas. The game ending 1-0 for this season, and they keep growing their numbers. If this University Football League was played here 20, 30 years ago, there would be one university competing. Now, there's as many. The other day, someone was reminding me that if you took just Gaba Road, from Nsambia, I think there is Cavendish, there is IUEA, there is KIU, there is Kampala University, and King Caesar University. between Zambia and
That's less
and,
than 10 kilometers.
yeah, that's liberalization that has happened. So I think the kind of numbers that they've created around this product is one thing you cannot despise. It's something that not many people would be able to do. They've tapped into the liberalization and the growth of numbers in terms of university and being able to attract them. And perhaps the easiest way to keep university students busy is sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have so many distractions, but sport is one of those. And I've always argued that one of the things we all benefit, and sport still grapples for financing, if we have many of the students who are playing here also getting an education, they are going to get into the so-called corporate jobs at these corporate companies. And the next time sport needs a sponsor, we have someone who has sweated on the pitch before and understands the value of doing that. So the more they play and the more numbers they get, the better. But congratulations, Muteesa I Royal University, which is actually located at a place, having grown up in Masaka, located at the place we used to call Teeko, Masaka Technical Institute. And I used to play a bit of my football there when I was younger. I used to go and run around. To play football is to know. I used to kick the ball around, not play necessarily. And now it's located there. So they are the champions. There haven't been so many up-country universities to win. You imagine Moni, Gulu, Busitema, Mbara University, I think have won this before, but there hasn't been so many. So a huge result for Muteesa I Royal University.
And congratulations to them. That's all we had for you this edition of Second Take with IDK. Remember, there is a Luganda version of this show as well, in case you find maybe, I know Luganda is definitely different, and yeah, but we greet you all and we love you all. Thank you for sharing, subscribing and liking. Please do keep those comments coming. We shall see you when we see you. Bye.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College Nabingo Road. GMS Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.